Hello everybody, welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We are News Flash, and we got a great one for you. We're starting with a little bit of a look at the Virginia governor's race. The result now today expected to signal the nation's mood across the country. Glenn Youngkin going against Terry McAuliffe. We'll give you the breakdown and how that race is shaking out in the early days. Very much in the early days, and kind of tell you what the result means before the result even happens, depending on, we'll give you a few results to kind of pick and sift through the situation. Also, that's not the only election we are going to be following tonight. We have a very important race, at least for the left-wing cause, with India Walton and Byron Brown. A victory in the Buffalo mayor's race on Tuesday by Walton would make history on several fronts. The incumbent mayor, Byron Brown, has mounted a write-in campaign against her. Also, little case for optimism from Julian Brave Noiscat in The Intercept about, Joe Manchin may not have completely destroyed the world yet. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get right into it here today. And we are starting, of course, yes, with this big Virginia election. And that is what we're really going to want to get into, because I think more than anything, it is, the Buffalo mayor's race is going to be a great indication of where the left is, and, how much power the left can flex, especially with, more coalitions of more, diverse people. It's going to be very, very interesting to keep a close eye on. So, yeah, that's definitely going to be worth watching. And another thing that's going to be worth watching in terms of where we are as, the nation, and, how dissatisfied people are, or, to be fair, satisfied, although I don't think that's going to be the verdict that's returned. I think personally probably what's going to happen now, the results is to be, full disclosure, it's about 7:40 right now. Results still coming in. But what I can say is, just as follows, is that we are going to see a very, very probably, the balance is we're going to see a rough night for the Democrats. They may win or lose by, 2 to 3 points. Either way, it's nothing to crow about. But it does not look like they're going to even win at the moment. So yeah, we have a very interesting situation here. Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe. They're both, very establishment centrist figures. And a big situation in this race has been about Trump. People have really wanted to know. People, have asked about, the Virginia coalition, because right now what we have is, the typical Democratic, coalition turning out minorities, but also turning out in a big way the Northern Virginia suburbs. That's going to be a very, very interesting area to watch about, how the Democrats do with that big suburban coalition that they've kind of just sacrificed the working class for over the last 4 to 5 years. And they made that big bet that they are going to hold up and win with that coalition in the long term. And it does not look like that is playing out at all whatsoever in Virginia, because what's happened right now is Trump is not on the ballot. As much as Terry McAuliffe would like Trump to be on the ballot, Trump is not on the ballot right now. Pretty much what Terry McAuliffe is doing is the Clinton strategy. He is running as a kind of establishment guy with very, very little in the way of policy, very, very little in the way of, inspiring positive message. Pretty much what he's going out and saying is, trying to compare, Glenn Youngkin as, kind of an extremist, a January 6th rider in, sheep's clothing and a nice fleece sweater, is what Joe Biden said. Extremism can come in many different forms, all that stuff. That's pretty much what the Democrats have decided to do. And it's looking very, very tough for them to do so, because Joe Biden just has not, again, it would probably work a little bit better in Virginia if the Democratic base there actually had the sense that Joe Biden was doing something for them. But what's happened on the other side is, as opposed to California where the GOP went way, way too extreme, what they did here is they went very moderate. So they got pretty much Glenn Youngkin. He is a guy who is, definitely, just a solid right-wing Republican, but much closer to, a Charlie Baker in Maryland, or, one of the, I believe Charlie Baker is in Massachusetts. Larry Hogan is in Maryland. But either way, these are red state governors who are pretty popular and, not that right wing. They're, relatively moderate people. And, if you look at the current governor, he's made this state exactly last in the nation for workers. So it's not like, there's a compelling positive case Democrats can make anyway with a guy who they're running who is already, again, Terry McAuliffe, already been governor of Virginia just one term ago. Now he's coming back for more. It's not like he had an awful time, but it's not like he had an incredibly great time. On the other side, we get, Glenn Youngkin. He's pretty much running as, that suburban dad. Doesn't really, care about Trump that much, but, just trying to run an inspiring campaign. Also, one that very much ties into the angst at the school board meetings we're seeing at Loudoun County, in those parts of Virginia about, critical race theory, left-wing encroachment in, suburban schools that has been really, really big. Those areas with the Democrats, people have loved to see. There's been big advances in those that are like the Loudoun County area, the school board belts, I guess you could call it in Virginia, but that's going to be very much put to the test tonight. Another area that's worth watching is Richmond. Democrats' historic margins in Virginia in recent years are really the result of maybe not an inexorable Democratic tide, but a furious resistance to Donald J. Trump. And again, that's what so much of this coalition, when they won the 2018 midterms, when they did well in 2020 or well enough in 2020, this bill may not have come due yet, but always in the back of my mind, I had a feeling that once you make you build your central coalition off of recent, kind of upper class white suburban voters who had just recently started voting for the Democratic Party because they didn't like Trump. When Trump leaves, when he's not on the ballot anymore, and especially when they're running a guy who's designed to appeal to these kind of people, which Glenn Youngkin certainly is, it's going to be a little bit of a tough time for you. And they are certainly, I think, feeling that now. So without Trump in office, Terry McAuliffe, the former Democratic governor, is now seeking a new term in that post, is fighting for his political life just 4 years after the current Democratic governor coasted to a 9-point win. Greater Richmond, including the capital city and diversifying suburbs, is the second fastest growing region in the state and a key to the governor's race, as well as a key to control of legislature. A poll released last week by Christopher Newport University suggested that Democrats were falling well short in the region. While it mirrored most other polls showing the governor's race had deadlocked statewide, it said that Glenn Youngkin, the Republican candidate, had pulled away from McAuliffe in the area, the Richmond media market, which is an area extending beyond the city and its populous suburbs and into the rural counties. So it's a pretty broad area, but what it is showing an area that has, historically been very strong for Democrats, and that's been built off of enthusiasm, especially negative enthusiasm against the Republicans, that is just not there. And if there's not a lot of excited votes, that could translate to a big way when it comes time to, cast the ballots. What we're looking at now with the Virginia results, it is just right now 8% of the votes in. It's 52.8 to 46.4. Terry McAuliffe is down on Glenn Youngkin. Right now it's 57 to 42. So, 23% reported a pretty big lead. A 15-point lead right now at the moment for Glenn Youngkin and over Terry McAuliffe. I think it is very interesting to see this result. I think it's definitely not. If it stays like this, if it's literally 15 points by the end of this, I would be shocked. But I think it's very, very fair to say that. We just saw a little bit of Youngkin just got up 0.3%, but either way, it's still very, very crazy to watch, and we will kind of take you through the point of the show so far, that things are really, really getting probably going to end up being tight, but Youngkin has a decisive lead. So here's what Nate Cohen is said about that just 2 minutes ago. That may be deceptive. So far, we have heavily Republican Election Day vote. Overall, 12% of Election Day votes have been counted by the state, compared to 5% of early and 2% of absentee votes. So that's probably going to be better for Glenn Youngkin. But if you look at these areas around what he's going to be really looking for, these kind of swing areas in the northern and kind of eastern sides of Virginia, areas like Brunswick, Greensville, Southampton counties, those are down by the Pennsylvania border on the eastern side. That Norfolk area, Virginia Beach is going to be very, very red. But there's going to be, there's still going to be, a lot more stuff to come in. Up in Alexandria, there's still a lot more votes to come in around the Roanoke area. But we will track the twists and turns for you over time. All right, let's find out a little bit more, here about this race. Let's see, because a lot of people have staked quite a lot on this race. So a poll last week, again, released by Christopher Newport, suggested that they are falling short in that region. So, and if they do fall short, if they continue to lose this key positioning in the suburbs, if they lose that big base of support, that could have big kind of like translatory effects down the road in other key areas of the country, places like the outskirts of Georgia where they made big gains. They made turn the suburbs super blue. All the places throughout the country where they've been making significant gains, and that'll come in big for House seats, if not for national elections next time around. These suburban locales, these places are really, really shifting if you get the right Republican candidate. And that's definitely something that should not be ignored. You do need the right Republican candidate. But, if we see this result holding here, which I probably think it will, but just not to the same degree that it is right now. It's not going to be 15, 16 point Terry McAuliffe loss, but this signals real problems for the Democrats, especially if Youngkin wins, just because it signals the just big crack in this suburban coalition nationwide. So Fairfax is usually among Virginia's last counties to report the final statewide election results and has given Democratic candidates a boost in past election nights, and it's delaying in reporting its early vote ballots. We do not know when those ballots are going to be counted, but will not be by the 8 p.m. deadline, which is about to come in about 10 minutes here as we record this. For Youngkin to win, he's going to really need it all. A favorable turnout and gains across the state, but there are two counties he must all but flip: Virginia Beach and Chesterfield outside Richmond. So looking for those same areas, those outskirts of Richmond, where if he's going to want to win, if he's going to want to flip a 10-point Biden victory and a 9-point Ralph Northam victory, who's the incumbent governor right now, he is going to need to eat away those gains in the suburbs. And it looks like, if polling is correct here, and if that's a big if, but you got to pick up the polling, pick up the vibes, put your finger in the air, and get a sense of what's going on in the country. And there's definitely, I think there's definitely going to be a big push, no matter what happens. And I think, a very big reassessment for the Democrats of where they are. And that kind of brings me to the next situation here. We are kind of hearing a little bit of reports about, with this Build Back Better situation, the Build Back Better agenda, the Biden's big social spending plan and all that. How does that play in to, what the progressives are trying to do? They're trying to obviously pass the Build Back Better with the infrastructure bill. But what we are seeing now is a first, real signaling from, Pramila Jayapal been kind of acting like that. Progressive Caucus releasing a statement, but there has been, some conflictory stuff on this from people like Manchin, for example. Not people like Manchin, people like Bernie, and I think Omar. I saw tweeting about this earlier today. But excuse me. Pretty much the question is, are they going to? I think really it's going to be very, very hard for them to substantially push back on this kind of awful $1.75, very much gutted $1 trillion infrastructure bill. But even though that we've seen Joe Manchin literally come out and say that he supports it. Oh, sorry, he doesn't support it. He thinks that the already incredibly gutted bill simply just does not go far enough, which is quite incredible to me. He still wants even more out of the Democrats in terms of concessions. But what we're hearing now is that Jayapal and progressives are pretty much now pulling back because they think that they will be blamed, kind of absurdly, nevertheless, but they still be blamed for this Virginia governor's race defeat because Terry McAuliffe didn't have something to run it on. It's certainly true. There's not it's not shocking to think, it's not a crazy situation, not unheard of to posit that Democrats would be left-wing Democrats would be blamed for just complete and utter failure on the part of the centrists. But that doesn't mean you can't fight back against it. Like, you're dealing with incredibly important agenda items. And if you vote for this bill, if you vote for either of these bills right now, I think it's hard to say call yourself progressive, because these bills are just not progressive. And you have the opportunity, you have the chance right in front of you, right here, right now, to make that big difference, to like make serious ask. Like, you have the leverage now, and you won't have it for long. So why not use it? And this bill, it's really not perfect. But if you're not, in my opinion, they should not be voting for this bill, whether it's tied to the infrastructure or not, because this is not a good bill. This is not progressive. It's just been gutted too far. It's really an insult to any sort of, progressive priorities, and they're just not being listened to. And there's just no instance, no effort to, that should be considered satisfactory by any progressives, made by the Biden administration to hold Manchin's feet to the fire. And this progressives have just been doing all Biden's work on his behalf. And there's just been no acknowledgement of that, no effort on behalf of Biden to get things moving in the right direction. So anyway, that's something that privileged eyeballs should not do, but it is a situation we will be watching very, very closely. But at least we have a good old Uncle Joe predicting a strong victory for the Democratic candidate. So that's something to be thrilled about. Anyway, we move on to our next Election Day related story. If Byron Brown succeeds in his frantic quest for a fifth term as mayor of Buffalo, he may well have a rubber stamp to thank. First elected, this is here in the New York Times. The last story, again, was in the New York Times as well. If I didn't say it, so I'm going to put that out there. So Jesse McKinley. He was first elected in 2005. Brown, 63, is currently running a write-in campaign against India Walton, a self-described Democratic socialist who saw in the political world in June by winning the Democratic primary here in Buffalo. A general election victory by Walton would be history-making on several fronts. She would be the first socialist to lead a major American city in decades, and the first woman and the first black woman to lead Buffalo, which is New York's second largest city. As Walton's early success, however, did not assure her a hearty embrace by state party leadership, Kathy Hochul and Jay Jacobs, the chairman of the New York State Democratic Committee, declined to endorse her, even as the race entered the final days. So they're pretty much gritting their teeth and hoping that their buddy Byron Brown, especially, by the way, Jay Jacobs in New York, who state chair of the Democratic Party here, or not here, but it is. He literally came out and said when Walton got the nomination, and they were kind of wondering why the party hadn't endorsed her yet in the campaign against Byron Brown, and Jay Jacobs was like, if David Duke was running the Democratic Party, would you want us to endorse him? You know what I'm saying? Like, just really, really crazy stuff, and just the coldest of cold shoulders, India Walton's away from somebody like, Jay Jacobs in the state Democratic Party. But, she has had a pretty solid, grassroots support. And, if she won once, hopefully she'll be able to hold it out today. It's definitely going to be a very, very important test. It's going to be a real race, because this, as in terms of writing campaigns go, this is a pretty serious situation. It's kind of been a lack of unified opposition, a serious lack of support for the Democratic Party, and many people are saying that may have given Brown the hope that he needs here. Polls, unfortunately, will not be closing for at least another hour, but the lack of unified, institutional support has given hope to Brown, who's considered a formidable challenger because of a long presence on the city's political scene. Still, Walton's is the only name that will be printed on ballots. Outnumbered in a heavily Democratic town, Republicans are not mounting a candidate, nor are any other parties. As a write-in candidate, Brown faces numerous logistical challenges, including getting voters to correctly mark his name on ballots. Serious misspellings could disqualify any votes intended for him. So, Byron Brown is going to have tons of Republican money, tons of, big pharma, big business money behind him to kind of challenge and, go through every single little bit of those results and just pretty much, declare, this B is for me, not for India Walton, just go down to the letter there. But here's what Brown kind of didn't say. It's actually kind of creative, to give him credit. Brown's campaign has purchased tens of thousands of ink stamps bearing the mayor's name at a cost of approximately $100,000 and distributed them to a variety of supporters across the city, according to the candidate. Under New York election law, using such a rubber stamp is legal. Brown has been aggressive about leading on labor allies, including the Civil Service Employees Association and Transport Workers Union of America, to get stamps to voters, which, by the way, if you, this is just, can I just go on a side, the side, this just bothers me, because if you look at, labor in this country has been so encouraging, especially in the latter half of this year, but it's such a great sign of the tremendous problems that we still have to go with, and the incredible militancy and power that actual real working class people still have to win back in their own goddamn movement, that we have very powerful unions backing Byron Brown. This guy lives to serve big business, lives to serve every single industry, every single special interest, including his own, under the sun. And we have two powerful, especially in New York, two powerful unions coming and supporting him, and lending this ridiculous campaign just because of business unionism and because of just corrupt leaders who just do not care about coming close to representing workers' interests. So that is very not encouraging, to say the least. Walton has been trying to press her inherent advantage of the help being, the only candidate in the ballot, and has employed the help of progressive stars in the primary, using Representative AOC, who traveled to Buffalo on the first day of early voting to stunt for her. We want to show that post-industrial cities, like the city of Buffalo, can thrive with progressive policies, said Ocasio-Cortez, who represents parts of Queens and the Bronx, said in an interview for the Buffalo television station WIVB. When you think about capitalism, socialism, etc., these are very high-minded debates. She said, I think what's important is we say, where's the beef? What are the policies each candidate is actually proposing? And you better believe Byron Brown does not have any policy. It's just write down Byron Brown. It's just India Walton is this very scary, wants to defund the police. She is not she's not the way the city should be taking it. And, India Walton has been very good at putting this into kind of contextualization without, sacrificing a lot of her message. Just saying, we want to restructure the police. We want to make them actually work and, do jobs that they can actually handle and do well in. Not, all of the crime-stopping positions that they're put in today. But she said, some of the Congresswoman's rhetoric underscored some of the challenges that Walton faces in this general election, including a nonstop battering from Brown, who has argued that Walton is inexperienced and proposed policies are too extreme for Buffalo. Those attacks have been echoed by some Republicans who found themselves in peculiar role as potential kingmakers in a city where their votes often have little impact. So if they get out there and cast their votes for the current mayor, they could really stop someone who's a lot more left-wing getting in there. Walton, who's a registered nurse making her first run for public office, says that Mr. Brown, a former leader of the state party, has done little to benefit regular Buffalo residents in his 4 terms, favoring instead deep-pocketed developers who built a series of projects along the city's Lake Erie waterfronts. She's assisted in making that argument by groups like the Working Families Party, who has regularly opposed moderate Democrats like Brown in favor of younger and more progressive campaigns like Walton, whose campaigns are often invigorated by social justice issues. So, yeah, Working Families Party has been actually a friend here. Hasn't always been the case, but Walton also got in the support of, all your local progressive favorites, Bernie, Warren, Jumaane Williams, who is now officially exploring a run for governor as well. He's a public advocate in New York. In the campaign's closing weeks, Walton has seen the pace of endorsements from establishment figures pick up, like Schumer and Gillibrand coming out from her. But the question is, is Kristen Gillibrand going to swing this race? And, really, this is a question of, what India Walton is offering here is, frankly, is actual politics. An offer to say things are not good. You have been neglected by the current leadership, the current administration of Buffalo, and we are going to, make it better. We're going to make it right. We're going to put you in a better situation, than you were before. And what really, what I think, all Byron Brown has on the other side is, scary Democratic socialist. Don't you like the way things have been now? This is going to be a real test of how much can the propaganda be cleared out by promises, actual substantive campaign promises to make your life better. So that's definitely going to be a thing worth watching. As we follow the results, probably in the unfortunately days and weeks to come. All right, let's move on. All right, ladies and gentlemen, time for some optimism. Not not every day that you hear that here on the on Newsflash of the Spence Walsh Radio Network, but we can do it. An interesting piece here by Julian Brave Noisecat. He writes in this in The Intercept, the 30-second television ad came out way back in 2010, but it might haunt Democrats and humanity for eternity. Joe Manchin, the governor of West Virginia, struts through the Appalachian woods, a bolt-action rifle in his right hand, and what appears to be paper targeting over his left shoulder. Touting his endorsement by the NRA, he rattles off a series of talking points, each punctuated by the jab of his finger, and they turn to be bullet points, really, in the truest sense of the word. Protecting the Second Amendment rights, taking on Washington to get the federal government off our backs and out of our pockets, cutting federal spending, repealing the bad parts of Obamacare, and the fact that he sued the EPA. Yeah, that's what we like to see. Worst environment for West Virginians. Yeah, let's go. He also says he'll take dead aim at the cap and trade bill. He says as he pulls out the trigger, and in a close-up of the target reveals it's literally the text of the American Clean Energy and Security Act because it's bad for West Virginia, he says matter-of-factly. 1 year earlier at the 15th UN Climate Conference in Copenhagen, Denmark, the United States committed to reducing its emissions by 42% by 2030 if an international agreement could be reached. President Barack Obama left Copenhagen with such an agreement, and the first midterm election came and went without a climate bill. Since then, the atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide have reached 415 parts per million for the first time in 3 million years. The last time there was this much carbon in the air, forests grew in Antarctica, the Greenland ice sheet did not exist, and sea levels were more than 50 feet higher than they are today. Our species did not yet walk this earth. The UN now describes climate change as a code red for humanity, and heeding the scientists, the Biden administration has revised the Obama targets upward, setting a goal of reducing U.S. emissions by 50 to 52% compared to their domestic peak in 2005 by the end of this decade. And of course, right on cue, Manchin is now a senator and is once again taking aim at key climate policies moving through Congress. According to the New York Times, Manchin has killed the Clean Energy Performance Program, part of Joe Biden's Build Back Better bill, or plan, which would have been the primary driver of emissions reductions from utilities. And we all know why Joe Manchin is doing this. It's not because of, specifically West Virginians' interests. Like, they're not going to be mad at him if he votes to, put in, specific kind of inoffensive Biden climate spending, like what he was proposing in that bill before Manchin cut it. It's literally because he is deeply and in multiple ways financially tied to the status quo, especially on climate issues. So, it's literally just that simple. That's why he's doing it. So, the Times reports that a proposed fee on methane emissions, which would reduce the concentration of potent greenhouse gases with 84 times more short-term warming potential than carbon dioxide, is also in Manchin's crosshairs. This leaves about $300 billion in tax incentives for clean energy to do most of the heavy lifting of decarbonization in the reconciliation bill. That's enough, according to some. Rhodium Group, a research firm founded by a former Obama administration official, or actually multiple, says that it is still possible for congressional legislation, federal regulations, and state actions, as well as market forces in combination, to cut emissions in half by 2030. Whether or not you or I find that plausible isn't immediate relevant. It's our only shot. What is relevant is whether world leaders assembling for the 26th UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow, Scotland this week find that all of that believable. Like Biden, the majority of the Democrats in Congress, they're willing to bet their political and economic fortunes on such a story coming true. Closing the emissions gap will be one of the most challenging things the U.S. has ever attempted. A recent report by the Rhodium Group, which has been read by key advisors in the White House as well as Senate and House leadership. Putting this gap in context, it continues at the same as zeroing out emissions from the entire state of Florida every year for the next 9 years. The American economy has only achieved these sorts of cuts in emissions in non-recession years twice. So they got to do this every year for the next 9 years. This is 2012 and 2016. Hopefully, we got a bit of a boost with that with 2020. I don't know. But the point is, there is still things that we can do. First, according to Rhodium's model, Congress would need to pass a Build Back Better Act without Manchin or any other Democrat picking off further climate policies in the legislation. In addition to tax credits for wind and solar, Congress would need to keep incentives for an array of clean industries, including electrical vehicles, distressed nuclear plants, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen fuels, and upgrades to make the buildings and homes more energy efficient. Lawmakers would also need to ensure that direct spending to support electric vehicles, charging stations, rural electric cooperatives, building, electrification, and reclamation and remediation of abandoned oil wells and coal mines, soil conservation and reforestation all remain in various parts of the Build Back Better Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It's also being considered by Congress. So that, that's an interesting way forward. Obviously, there's still a lot more that needs to be done. And I've seen, some activists questioning whether or not, some people questioning, activists should be celebrating this Biden bill, not complaining. We're dealing with an existential crisis. All they need to do is complain. Like, that's literally the only thing. They are not doing their job if they do not complain. Anyway, just a little bit of hope for you, a little bit of encouragement, a little bit of a sight of the path with this Rhodium model here in the Intercept. A path for progress in climate policy that you may not have, quite thought existed in the beginning. All right, hopefully this sounded a little bit crisp today. I think it really did here in the podcast studio at Tisch Library. We will be back on Thursday.